The world of e-commerce can be tricky, and that's why you need the experts to help take you to the next level. This is Delivering E-commerce. Delivering E-commerce. You'll hear from leaders and industry experts from around the globe, letting you in on their stories and journeys. Your host has 25 years in the retail industry and has been leading the strategy and development of e-commerce sites for 17 years, working with Walmart, Newegg, Big Al's, Rin's Pets, and Home Hardware. We think he may be qualified. This is Delivering E-commerce. And this is Chris Parsons.
Hey everyone, and welcome to our second episode of Delivering E-commerce. I'm your host, Chris Parsons, and I'm so excited and honored to be here with my guest today, Matt LeBeau. Hey, welcome, Matt. Thanks for taking a Saturday morning to chat with me. And I know I'd love to be sitting with you at a Tim Hortons right now having a coffee, but unfortunately with COVID, we have to have the 3-meter rule in place. So here we are, and I would love to open up and give you the opportunity to talk about what you're doing, everything from cradle to grave with you. So I'll turn the floor over to you now.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris. Really appreciate being here. And yeah, it would have been super cool to be able to hang and do this kind of more informally in person, as you said. But yeah, this is the state of the nation, and we're getting through it. So it's changed my business fundamentally.
Yeah, tell me about that. I mean, COVID, for everyone that's paying attention to the news, with the home industry, it's exploded. But with your industry, I wouldn't have expected it to be the same. So talk to my audience about that.
Yeah, the health and wellness space. So we do supplements, we do natural body care, we do organic foods, gluten-free foods. So really the specialty wellness product space. And with restaurants being closed, and I think a large portion of people's expendable income for food and consumables being consumed at that level, that's all closed. So retail is seeing epic times as a result of all this. And whether it be grocery stores, drug stores, independent health food stores, and of course, e-commerce is off the charts. So we've been struggling to keep up. This COVID's been a bit of a race, to be honest with you. Where's the supply chain at? When's the next production run? All of those things is the order of the day. We're not focusing too hard on having to drive the sales number. It's making sure we can meet demand.
Yeah, from a logistical perspective, let's dive into the benefits of your nutritional products. Everyone's battling with mental health issues. Changing to a more healthy lifestyle, obviously a big benefit. It will just be an inspiration for folks. So talk about some of those benefits.
Yeah, initially through COVID, it started with the immunity-based products. So I think everybody was jumping on to got to get my immune system boosted up and fight a good defense game strategy. And then it has definitely moved into mental health and adaptogens. So products that are helping stress, helping your state of mind. And so there's lots of herbs and vitamins and all of these things that focus on a variety of categories. Those are definitely, as we stand here in mid-April, those are the ones that are in the highest demand. I think we're seeing some decline in certain areas like sports proteins. People keep gyms, so they're not, as strict on the regimes around working out and just for lack of options. We're seeing a second and third wave of pantry stuffing, Chris. So, we sell some gluten-free breads. We're seeing a spike again, not quite like the spike of March and April of 2020, but certainly seeing upward numbers again as people are locked down across Canada.
Sure. So not as bad as when you couldn't find toilet paper anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what I want to get from you is the story about, did you see yourself as a student taking on this career? Where did you see yourself?
I am a high school dropout. I come from an entrepreneurial family. So my grandfather and my uncles all owned and worked in masonry, construction, bricklaying. So I spent lots of time in my youth slugging it out, and obviously didn't love that part of it, but learned a work ethic. But secondary to that, what I didn't realize I was absorbing is the entrepreneurial spirit and the kind of the behind the scenes of what goes on in a small family business.
Right. And that work ethic.
And the work ethic to be able to do that, because it's definitely not 9 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, good for you. I know a lot of people kind of snub their noses to anyone that drops out of school, or it's you. I know for sure believe in education and how important it is, but it just wasn't the right path for you. My story, where I've had grown up with a learning disability. I went to school, but I never had great grades. Nothing to be proud of, that's for sure. But ultimately, those things make you work harder and appreciate things. So these long hours that you and I put in is what we have to do.
Yeah, definitely had to work harder in the early, still am, but still had to work harder in the early stages compared to our peers to try to compete. I think we had a small advantage. They were off at university for 4 years, and
right.
I was in the trenches making stacks, and I had switched to the grocery channel by then. I got out of masonry and joined Loblaw's companies and spent 10 years there. And that was a wonderful place to cut my teeth and learned a lot of lessons about retailing, which has really shaped and guided my whole career, which was unexpected. It's just one of those things that got into it, enjoyed it. I love people. I think that's all what kept me in. And retail is, you just come across oodles and oodles of people. I've moved to the supply chain side now, but I still feel like I live at an intersection. There's constantly new people coming in and out. And
so maybe you can take us through how you acquire clients and what you look for when you're looking for a new product line, and how do you go to market? What's your go-to-market strategy with those clients?
So we are a sales agency. So in essence, what we do on a day-to-day is people would outsource their sales needs to us. Instead of hiring their own national sales team, we come with people. I in essence am a bolt-on VP sales, and then I come with my own team that is in all the major markets. So we've got about 25 different salespeople across Canada, and they work out of their home offices. And then there's a group of admin people that back them up at our home office in Southern Ontario. Looking for new clients, honestly, it's kind of a specialized piece of business that we do in the natural organic space. So we're not doing really any advertising. It's word of mouth, and people ask retailers. Retailers are our biggest advocate when they go out to the market and they say, "Hey, who's a sales agency that does a good job and gets the job done?" We that's our number one way of referral, is through retail, for sure.
So how would folks go ahead and get in touch with you? You might as well. We'll touch on it a couple of times, because I want to make sure that people have the pleasure of at least reaching out with you, connecting. What is the best way?
Yeah, I'm available on pretty much every platform. So Twitter @NaturalMatt, LinkedIn Matt LeBeau, Instagram Matt LeBeau, my website LeBeauExcel.com. There's a list of emails there. Certainly those are probably the easiest ways, and then I'm sure on any of those platforms you'd be able to grab my number. I'm not shy about putting my number out there. So
perfect. Thanks for that. And I'm sure if people Google great hair, they'll see a photo of you. Because I have hair envy whenever I see you, that's for sure. I mean, I know you gave me some tips on some nutrition that can help me with that, but it hasn't been doing the job so far. Too much stress in my life.
I hear you. I'm also using some natural gels and shampoos, so the prevention factor is part
right.
of it. And
I should have done that 20 years ago.
That's right.
Okay, I want to get to some tips and tricks, some best practices, what you're dealing with. I know you mentioned the struggles of COVID and the logistics side, and you mentioned how e-commerce was really exploded for you. Let's talk about the e-commerce side of it first. What are you experiencing?
Yeah, so our category, especially vitamins, herbals, proteins, was, I'd say, one of the first ones to really embrace and adopt e-commerce. So, going back into even the early 2000s, you had retailers like Haba Supplements that had a huge online program. And I think it had to do with the clientele that, it's the 15 to 25-year-old male clientele typically is who was buying a lot of these sports nutrition products at the time. it's definitely moved on to other categories. Anything that's kind of shippable, not refrigerated, not frozen, and easy to ship. Our categories have moved en masse, and a lot of retailers took advantage of that and created their own website and profiles. And then a lot of them have actually just taken on Amazon themselves.
Right.
A lot of my clients, we do Amazon on behalf of our clients as a sales agency. So we have a team specifically dedicated to Amazon and the analytics behind it and all of that stuff. But a lot of retailers have jumped on. So your corner health food store could be posting, products to Amazon. A lot of guys have gotten really savvy about those place websites. So and as far as marketing goes, my sales reps, we used to sell ad space or buy ad space in these flyers that came to your door and still come to your door. We still have the suppliers all pay for those. But in this day and age, a lot more dollars are diverted to e-commerce in the sense of Instagram takeovers or Facebook posts or e-blasts, whatever. But it's a huge part of what we do now. And my team has had to pivot in a big way to, gain education around this. And we've gone out and hired third-party experts to, do education programs on how to make salespeople who are in the field and experts on nutrition also become experts on how to help their stores utilize e-commerce and spending our co-op dollars or trade marketing dollars on those things instead. So it's never going back. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, we see probably the rule of thumb was e-commerce represented about 10% of your total business. And I think in most retailers are well over the 20% the last year and a half. And it's definitely gained new audience. Are you seeing, you mentioned that it was the 20 somethings that were really buying nutritional products early on for workouts and nutrition. What's the spread now? Is it all ages that are buying supplements?
Definitely all ages. We have to, the older crowd, call it the 60 pluses. It's different platforms. You have to reach them on. Right. So, Twitter is good for kind of instant messaging. Instagram is a younger crowd. Facebook's an older crowd. TikTok is probably all crowds, but yeah. TikTok and YouTube kind of go back and forth because it's that video platform. TikTok might be the younger ones and YouTube would be the older, but we're seeing it all, but they definitely, bricks and mortar isn't going away. I think it's been, a marriage. So it's just another, the omnichannel, right? You just have to sell your products wherever people want them. And they may want them from a store one week and they may want them delivered to their house the next week. I think it switches based on what's happening in people's lives, or are they at the cottage or at home or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, what you said there is that omnichannel experience. I've been using a term, and I'm not sure if I've made it up or not, but I'm going to take credit for it. It's that blended shopping experience now. The blended shopper is so important. They're going to shop online or research online. They're going to still make that trip to the store. Depending on how their week's going is how they're going to shop. It's not one channel versus another anymore. They're leveraging all of them. So it's exciting. You're going to have to make sure that you're available in all of them to serve a customer now. I wanted to touch back on Amazon. The reason I bring them up is you mentioned that you guys do get your clients up on Amazon. There's a lot of fear in the industry, whether it's valid or not, that Amazon's going to study the success of products and then go and knock them off. Do you guys have that same fear in your industry?
I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, here in Canada, the regulatory regime for natural health products is pretty significant. And I just can't envision Amazon trying to go through that gauntlet for a population the size of Canada personally. And I think that it's all about branding. So branding is such a critical exercise these days. And that's different than e-commerce. That's the whole connecting with your consumer and understanding their needs. And the strong brand is always going to float to the top. And
great points.
I think brands rush to market these days. They want to be in Loblaws. They want to be in Shoppers Drug Mart. But I think they should really focus on their core branding, know who their consumer is before they jump into those platforms. And the independent channel and the e-commerce allows you that connection. So it's critical. And I don't think, Amazon's going to be able to take that away from people.
Yeah, I always say you can't bury your head with Amazon in the sand, because ultimately they're the number one portal for searching products now. So they've passed Google many years ago. So you really do need to find a good balance of making sure that you're there. And I don't think you can worry about them knocking off products anymore. That's a big concern for a number of folks. But I always say, if the audience is there, you're going to spend a fortune trying to acquire them elsewhere. You might as well go and play with the big boys. Let's talk about some other pieces of your career as you've evolved. Who from your network or your past has played a major role in you maybe coaching or mentoring or just giving you tips along the way?
Yeah, I could put it in kind of phases. In the early phases of my career, it was my grandfather, who was an entrepreneur himself, and he used to have dinner with MPs and MPPs and mayors and aldermen and all these, because in construction that was how you got things done. And I learned that engaging in the political realm is actually a pretty important piece if you want to move your business forward, depending on what your business is, I guess. I'm involved in a lot of boards on my industry and advocate on behalf of the industry, and you have to teach politicians what it is you want and make demands, and that's just the way the system works. And I would say we need more people to realize that you can't just expect politicians to know what's up. You gotta teach them and meet your local politicians for one. That's one lesson I learned from him. And then when I moved into post-retail supply chain side, I had a couple of gentlemen, Jim Estel, who owned a company called EMJ Data Systems. He then sold that to Cinex Canada, and he has since bought Danby Canada, which is the large refrigerator and appliance manufacturer. And he's local, but I got to spend a lot of time in boardrooms with him and some of his consultants. So it was like a sponge. It was my mid to late 20s, and it was an amazing opportunity for somebody like me who hadn't dropped out of school to be around all these masters of business, and accountants, and in a planning sessions and
Right.
problems. It was a really great opportunity. And then now I'm always seeking out education and learning. So I'm a member of McKay CEO Forums. That's once a month, about a dozen CEOs meet, and we kind of bring a problem to the table, and everybody, spitballs it and says, "Hey, here's my experience in a similar kind of situation." That's been a good one for me. And then sitting on boards, they're volunteer boards. So I've sat in a Council of Ontario, and I am currently on the Plant-Based Foods of Canada board, and I get exposed to high-level people that also have had some success and want to give back. And you gain friendships, and you gain, that ability to call people and just, hey, and just see what they're doing. So we're in an industry where a lot of skyrocketing brands are emerging. So Love Good Fats and the keto trend. And so I see a lot of kind of 0 to 60 million or 100 million in 2 to 3 years. So some really interesting case studies. I was involved in a middle role at Vega. So Vega was a sports nutrition vegan protein line. So it kind of changed the protein business in a big way, because they moved from plant-based proteins to vegan protein, and they went from 0 to 200 million in probably 10 years, and then ended up selling to ultimately Danone for like $500,000 US, or 500 million US, which is, obviously generational wealth kind of dollars. So
right.
I've been lucky and smart enough to know when to sit down, shut up, and listen, I think.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that point up. I know we've been to a number of gatherings together, and one of the things that I notice that's similar between us is we're not always the loudest person in the room. We're kind of sitting there observing and taking things in, and then your comments are always on point. And that's what I appreciate about you. Instead of being that flamboyant person in the room just that wants all the attention, you're really listening to the audience and monitoring and getting the pulse of things. And then you'll come out with some very good insights in conversation. So I appreciate that about you, because there's times where Yeah, well, I love to talk myself. So if both of us were in the room to chat together, it would be a war on words there. So the piece that comes next is you can do all of those things. You can join all these different boards, but what motivates you? What brings it all to life for you?
I think sadly, it's probably the fear of failure.
Right.
When you boil it down, I've got 3 kids. I got bills at university and college now. My kids are kind of moving into that space. How are they going to afford houses when this market is so hot? And
Right.
when you and I first bought our house, it's going to be tough. So they're going to need their parents' help, and the families that are involved in our business. So all of our employees and their dependents. And it's it's not something that I would say I'm not one to stay up at night. Like, I'm a good sleeper, thank goodness. But when you get up, it's there. And
Right.
it's motivating. And yeah, my wife works in the business with us now, so that's sometimes the whole, when do we turn it off and turn it on? And when you're trying to have social time and then suddenly work creeps into date night, or it's work, man. But it's something I love. And I'd say fear of failure might be it, but then the enjoyment of success, and that doesn't mean monetary success. It's helping other entrepreneurs, because that's in essence what we do as a sales agency. I have a whole bunch of entrepreneurs that we are working with, and so we get to help them move the needle and reach their goals, and be part of the planning of the goals. That stuff jazzes me up. I love helping grow companies. That's
I think that's the important piece that a lot of people miss, is that in order to actually have success yourself, the more you help others, the more you learn from that guidance, those conversations, and you end up making yourself even more successful by doing more for others. And I know some people don't feel that way. They're a bunch of takers. And I always find once you put stuff out there, and I know I don't believe necessarily in karma, but once you put stuff out there, it generally it empowers you more.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you feel the same, but I do believe that.
I 100%. We represent 25 different suppliers, and I try to keep it compact. Some of my competitors have hundreds of suppliers, and I don't know how they can really help everybody, just there's too many people.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I do is I always commit to giving entrepreneurs in my space 20 minutes to a half an hour chat and just pick my brain, whether it's hey, what's the distribution strategy, or who are the key people at retail that they need to talk to. I really do believe in that. Put it out there, good things happen, and you gain more friends, and ultimately you never know where life's going to go. That's the fun part.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions at your level, how do you manage your time? Do you have a gentleman I know in the industry manages his hours and breaks it out into 15-minute increments. Is there a formula that you have?
Yeah, I definitely. So when I worked with Jim Estel, he is very much a planner and divides his day. I think it might be half an hour increments, but and I did try that for a good long while, but I know that you have to dedicate time to get work done, and I do that, but I'm a little bit more free flowing. I come in, and emails is the order of the morning. Then it's follow-up phone calls if anything I haven't completed for the next day. And then KPI, check-ins. So where are we at on the week, on the month? We're a sales organization, so we live and die by the where the sales are at. So keeping our eye on the ball on that regard. And then, based on what I learned there, I'll engage in some, discussions, maybe some corrective changes of strategy, that sort of thing. And then, with us in this space and how popular this space is, I pretty much have a brand a day, or a discussion a day with somebody I don't know. And so that takes up some time. And yeah, how quickly 8 to 10 to 12 hours will slip by. And but yeah, those are the keeping your eye on the numbers, I think is for me. And then being on top of what's going on in your staff's lives. Keeping a check-in with obviously with COVID, kids are home. How are people impacted by that? What's their, how are they managing childcare? Are they even able to, or are they just trying to work with the kids in the background, which we have lots of that going on at the moment. And just, we don't manage hours. We manage, hey, here's a project. We need the deadline. And in fact, I would say we're questioning, how much time people need to spend in the office. We definitely have already peeled it back to a maximum of 3 days a week. That period of COVID where people were coming back to work, and I don't think we'll ever go back to 5 days a week. And really, it's all about, it might drop to 2 days a week. And the only reason I would insist upon that to some degree is collaboration in person. There's nothing like getting into a room and just, brainstorming and tossing ideas back and forth. That it isn't quite the same on video platforms.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for the last 10 years, there's been the big debate about work from home and how successful it is. But it's amazing when you go through an experience like this, you see how people can adapt and change and parent at the same time. There's so many times where I'm on a Teams meeting and you'll see kids in the background, and you just give them a wave and give them a few seconds of attention that they're looking for, and then they move on. And it's a great way to actually create that rapport with families as well. So it's not just business. And I think it's teaching us a lot. And that blend later on will be great of the work from home and an office. And I agree when you say that brainstorming, I always call it my whiteboard sessions. I really don't feel that they're the same through a virtual environment versus when we get together and you grab stickies and you generate ideas. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was actually, how do you go about generating ideas and keeping your marketing fresh and getting your brands noticed?
We basically outsource, we're an outsource a lot of things,
right?
Through a refresh on our website logo and all of that. And we used, shout out to Jan Kelly, marketing in Burlington, Ontario. They did an amazing job, and we sat with them. Unfortunately, it was on Zoom, but as far as planning or brainstorming goes, and we got to the heart of who we were on a day-to-day and what our values were, and then that kind of steered, some of the color choices and our wording on our website, and even we changed our, kind of tagline as a result. So. Mm-hmm. Find an expert. That's definitely my go-to strategy. If I don't have the relationships at a retailer, I'm going to hire somebody that has those relationships and find an expert there. And Walmart Retail Link, right? That's a whole new level of itself, that kind of thing. As far as our brands go, we've learned all these lessons, and we definitely change and pivot. So we use a CRM program called Salesforce, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We happen to have, based on a previous business that I was in, a bunch of Oracle experts on staff. So we have some super users, and we've been able to manipulate and pivot within Salesforce, knowing that how the background of that program works and make it work for us even better. That's probably the general rule of how we change or how we stay on top of things. As far as our brands go, it has to do a lot with the founder and the messaging. We've got to get to know that. We've got to spend time with them and absorb who they are, what are their values, and then help amplify that in the market, whether it's, all of our sales reps getting super passionate about what it is they're selling, which is part of our industry. So that's spending time learning about them and who they are so that we can become part of their family, and then amplifying whatever they're doing. We've got a fairly strong social media program on, especially LinkedIn, because it's more B2B. Right. But, even, Insta and Face and those things, TikTok, we're sharing all of their content and critiquing it and giving them some, hey, we've seen little things like this that work, and you might want to try this. And
you're really touching on a lot of channels there and making sure that you're not just focused on one, which is great because all of those channels explode at different times. So it's interesting that TikTok, I watch, we both have boys are the same age, and the energy that they're spending on TikTok right now is amazing. I don't know how long they'll stay on that platform. Guys like you and I grew up on Facebook and probably still have profiles there today, but these kids with TikTok, I don't know where it's going to go, because I see some crazy things that the young folks are doing. The dances that they come up with are just well, let's say they're unique. The other question I had for you, Matt, was from an e-commerce perspective in your business, where do you see it going over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's going to increase ultimately in the sense that retailers are integrating e-commerce into their data. Loblaws has their pick and pack, and you can drive up to the store and they throw your groceries in the back end. And those markets has a grocery gateway, and of course that's just been bought by Sobeys in the last 30 days from when we're talking. And then Sobeys has launched their Sobeys Voila platform. So the critical piece for us is making sure our products are not only in store, but also listed on their e-commerce platforms. And then the loyalty program. So whether it's Aeroplan or PC Points, this all layers to an e-commerce style of marketing that we are doing. And they have their apps, and people are basically walking around grocery stores looking at their phones to see what extra deals they're going to get on their apps. And so it engages on how we have to go from that perspective. And I think more manufacturers are going to sell direct to consumer than via retail, because the Amazons and of course Walmart's now changed their website into a marketplace website, so you can post things there, and there's more coming down the pipe as we understand it. I think that's going to be a big part of e-commerce, is the manufacturers, especially small to medium-sized enterprises, selling direct to consumers, and that's not going to slow down. And in fact, I think it empowers the small to medium-sized manufacturers on two fronts. A, they know their consumers, but B, they're getting a little bit more margin than they would through going through a retailer, and that's allowing them more dollars to invest in their business and hopefully ultimately make them successful. I don't see that pathway changing, and the more I see these new brands launching, these young 20-something entrepreneurs, a lot of them launching exclusively on e-commerce. To begin with, and moving to retail after. And I think you're going to see way more of that.
You touch on the manufacturing now that they have the flexibility on being on marketplaces, whether it's Amazon Marketplace, Walmart, or even Loblaws has one now. And I think Hudson Bay just launched their own as well. So everyone's getting into that space. But that means a manufacturer has to become a drop shipper as well, and or outsource to a third-party logistics center to handle it for them. How many of them in your conversations kind of feel that they want to get down that road of being in the logistics game as well as manufacturing?
Most of the ones I talk to, unless it's restricted by either frozen or refrigeration, aim to do it. And they are repivoting their warehouses to create some space for pick and pack single unit rather than case or pallet only shipments. And that's definitely the way it's going. Frozen and fresh obviously create their own issues, but you're seeing a lot more of these small regional e-commerce delivery companies. Good Food is one of them that we deal with, and so they are only online, and they specialize in creating kind of meal kits, and that's an interesting platform to watch. I don't know where that's going long term. The jury's out for me on that one, but the insight that you get is so valuable. I don't see how anybody could not take it as their first step.
And speaking of insight, Matt, you mentioned Walmart and Retail Link. Have you and your team been diving into that powerful tool? Like, I one of my first roles was with Walmart as an analyst, and I dived into that tool to find out an opportunity with a couple of our products. So I probably overtell this story, but it was about basket analysis and really looking at a product that we were struggling to sell a lot of, and didn't matter if we would put it on sale or not, which was toothpaste. And you would look at the ebbs and flows of toothpaste, and then all of a sudden you would see this spike, and you were like, what brought that spike on when it wasn't on sale? And what I ended up finding out through basket analysis was whenever we were advertising tuna on the front page of a flyer, we would get a spike in oral care, specifically toothpaste. And it was a subconscious decision from shoppers that anytime that they had product that was bad for their breath, that they would naturally go and say, okay, I'm going to be eating tuna this week. I have to go over and buy oral care products to combat that. So ultimately what happened is you now look at these categories that weren't necessarily thought of connecting, and you're able to go to market different. Like I could now all of a sudden market tuna multiple times a year, knowing that I would get this category lift in oral care, and I had to now advertise toothpaste less because I would get the lift I wanted to from another product. Are you seeing anything like that?
Yeah, we definitely are watching and analyzing Retail Link, and a lot more retailers are sharing data. Retail the gold standard around what we can access and not be charged for it. A lot of the other guys are trying to use it as a unfortunately. And I think if you give the suppliers the data, they will make the right decisions and the right connections. I think that's a critical piece to that. But yeah, Metro partnered with a company called dunnhumby, which is an American analytics firm, and we were selling a brand of kettle popcorn at the time, and we learned that Gillette razors for some reason spiked whenever our popcorn was on special. Honestly, we never could come up with why the heck that happened, but it definitely changed our strategy. And we looked at when Gillette razors were on special, and we kind of followed their promotion.
Yeah, co-branded, and that's great.
Yeah, so it's definitely, there's some gems in there that you can't beat by looking at data like that.
Yeah, 100%. I only have a couple more questions left for you. The one we haven't touched on, and I thought for sure would be brought up by now because of the categories that you're in, is the power of influencers. Are your brands leveraging influencers?
Absolutely. I would say every brand kind of has their own strategy, and it's getting to the point where they're looking for influencers that represent their core customer. So brands are getting learning who their core customer is, and then looking for influencers that represent that. But one of my supplement brands has 200 different influencers and micro influencers. So they're like in the 2,000 to 10,000 followers range, and they're focused on the different regions, the BC and Alberta, and even in BC interior versus lower mainland. Or so it's a big strategy on health and wellness. Obviously, there's a lot of holistic nutritionists online that are working on advice and plans, helping people get healthy, and they are using our products during their own day-to-day, and now they're just blogging about it and vlogging, and that's a huge opportunity. So it's part of it's the biggest part of our marketing strategy going forward, is spending a lot of time on influencers and getting the right ones. So you're right. Yeah, I'm surprised it hadn't come up yet. But
no, it's funny because we do talk about it a lot here, and influencers, and some of it is really forced, and I think an audience can really sniff that out, that it's a forced influence, and I find that the market is really looking for people to be authentic, and if you're going to use it, give a real rating, whether you like it or not. Like, be honest about that conversation, and that's going to be better for your overall brand versus just a sponsored influencer that is going to just give this phony presentation, and you see it's so forced through, because no matter how good of an actor you are, you can see when it's forced.
There's certainly that problem out there. I think that a lot of ours, even though it might be paid, it's not a huge payment, but they are passionate. This is where they've been educated. They got into this field for reasons of their own health and wellness, probably. So a lot of it is authentic. It's just this brand versus that brand, and some of the nuances. But we've been pretty lucky with our influencers that they're legitimate and really do want to use these products on a day-to-day. Often they'll accept just product because they just want to have product at their house that instead of having to buy it. So.
Yeah, it's nice because if they believe in it, they're actually consuming it, then it is a payment, right? Because they're saving those dollars from buying it. Just last couple of questions here. The opportunity to talk to our audience. Maybe you have a couple of key takeaways for them, some best practices. What can you tell the folks that are listening to us today to help them with their journey?
I think authenticity, be yourself, I don't know. I'm not one on giant words of wisdom, Chris, but I'm up and try to put my best foot forward, being positive, treat people with kindness. I think that's critical. There's a lot of people struggling in COVID, and I think it's just made us more aware that there was probably a lot of people struggling before
COVID. Yeah.
And so I always, treat people with kindness and honesty. And sometimes, you don't have to, you can talk straight, but you don't have to talk mean.
I've been a big advocate of a book called Radical Candor. And it's just being able to be direct with people when they let you down and tell them, but you're not being a jerk about it. You're just saying, hey, I expect more out of this relationship, this partnership. And having that upfront conversation stops a lot of the behind the doors conversations where now it becomes cancerous. So I encourage anyone to check out Radical Candor as a read, or the way I read books is through an Audible, so I don't have to actually spend the time reading. I do a lot of driving, so it makes it much easier to maximize that time. Matt, it's been a true pleasure. I respect you so much, and you're such a good person in the community. You coach and volunteer. You take time out of your busy schedule to always give back. I truly appreciate you taking the time on a Saturday morning when I know you could be somewhere else to help me with my second podcast. I appreciate it.
Chris, my pleasure. And I hope this is wildly successful. I think it's a very, very relevant topic, and a lot of people could learn a lot of stuff from you. And the fact that you're bringing in other people to share is an amazing thing. And I think it's, kind of who you are anyway. You're very collaborative, and all the best. And thank you. Look forward to service. You're a coach as well, and boy, I can't wait till we get to stand behind a bench again and spend some time with the kids.
Yeah, actually, one topic I want to bring up. I'm very fortunate last night. I got my first sponsor for the podcast. We'll announce that coming up. I'm so excited. I haven't even posted an official podcast yet, and I've got a sponsor. So that is exciting. And ultimately, what I'm doing with the dollars I want to give back, I touched on it earlier. I grew up with a learning disability, and I want to give back to kids that are struggling at school and help them with confidence in their life. So the dollars that I happen to be fortunate enough to generate from this podcast will be going towards that cause. And I'm looking forward to announcing more about both of those topics, the sponsorship and the great company that decided to support me on this journey, and then how we're going to give back to the youth and make sure that they don't leave school with a lack of confidence because they may learn differently than the traditional way. So thanks again, Matt. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can do this again in person.
Absolutely. Look forward to that day.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Have a good one.
You too, Chris. Cheers.
You've been listening to Delivering eCommerce. It's our passion to have on leaders and suppliers in e-commerce from around the globe, setting you and your strategy up for the next level. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Chris on LinkedIn at Chris Parsons, on YouTube at Chris Parsons Delivering eCommerce, and on Twitch at Chris Parsons 1976. Till next time, this is Delivering eCommerce.